Imagine building the most powerful warship of your era, a symbol of national might, only for it to sink itself mere minutes into its maiden voyage. Not in battle, not in a storm, but in calm waters, barely a mile from shore. This isn't fiction. This is the true, astonishing tale of the Vasa, Sweden's pride, a vessel so ambitious it literally carried its own doom from the moment its keel was laid. It's a story of hubris, engineering disaster, and a king's unyielding will. The year is 1625. Europe is a powder keg. The 30 Years' War rages, and Sweden, under the formidable King Gustavus Adolphus, is rapidly emerging as a dominant Baltic power. He needed a fleet to match his ambitions. Gustavus Adolphus wasn't just a king. He was a warrior king, a brilliant military strategist, and famously impatient. He envisioned a new flagship, larger and more heavily armed than anything seen before, to project Swedish power. In January 1625, he placed the order for 4 new warships. One of them, the Vasa, was to be truly exceptional. It needed to carry an unprecedented number of heavy bronze cannons, especially on its upper deck. Construction began in the Stockholm shipyard. Master shipwright Henrik Hybertson was tasked with translating the king's vision into reality. It was a monumental undertaking, involving hundreds of skilled craftsmen. But almost immediately, problems arose. The king's demands for more heavy guns, particularly a second gun deck, pushed the limits of contemporary ship design. Stability was a growing concern, whispered among the builders. What many people believe about the Vasa is that its design flaws were purely the result of incompetence. But the truth is more complex. The shipwrights were under immense pressure, and the king himself kept changing the specifications. Gustavus Adolphus was fighting in Poland and sending letters demanding updates, often revising his requirements. He wanted a ship that was both fast and heavily armed, a contradiction that would prove fatal. In 1627, Master Hybertson died, passing the unenviable task to his assistant, Hein Jacob's son. By this point, the Vasa's fundamental design, with its dangerously high center of gravity, was already locked in. Before launch, a stability test was customary. 30 men would run across the deck, simulating the force of a broadside. The Vasa immediately listed so badly, it looked like it would capsize right there. The test was quickly halted. Captain Sofring Hansen, the ship's commander, and other officials were present. They knew it was unstable, but no one dared tell the king his magnificent new warship was fundamentally flawed. The king was known for his swift and severe punishments for failure. Challenging his vision, especially for something he had personally commissioned, was simply unthinkable for those involved. This wasn't just any ship. It was the regal Skepet Vasa, the royal ship Vasa. It was adorned with hundreds of elaborate, brightly painted wooden sculptures depicting Roman emperors, lions, and mermaids. These weren't just decorations. They were propaganda, designed to intimidate enemies and proclaim Sweden's imperial might. The Vasa was a floating work of art, a testament to Swedish craftsmanship and ambition. The date was August 10th, 1628. Stockholm Harbor was abuzz. Crowds had gathered to witness the grand maiden voyage of the Vasa. Dignitaries, foreign envoys, and citizens lined the shores. The ship was fully rigged, its sails unfurled, catching a gentle breeze. Cannons fired a salute as the Vasa slowly pulled away from the dock, a majestic sight, seemingly invincible. As it moved further into the harbor, a sudden, relatively light gust of wind caught its sails. The ship immediately listed to port, then righted itself. A moment of unease, quickly dismissed by the cheering crowds. But then a second gust, no stronger than the first, hit the Vasa. This time, the list was more severe. Water began to pour into the open lower gun ports, which were meant to be closed but had been left open. Chaos erupted on deck. The ship was listing violently. Sailors scrambled, trying to secure the guns, close the ports, but it was too late. The Vasa was taking on water at an alarming rate. Within minutes, the Invincible warship rolled onto its port side, its massive hull disappearing beneath the calm surface of the harbor. It was barely 1,300 meters from the royal palace. The horror of the onlookers was profound. Imagine the cheers turning to gasps, then screams. One eyewitness, Vice Admiral Klaus Fleming, described the ship simply falling over. Around 30 to 50 people were on board, including many women and children who had come along for the celebratory voyage. Most were saved by nearby small boats, but between 30 and 50 lives were lost. The immediate aftermath was one of shock and utter disbelief. How could Sweden's most powerful, most expensive warship, a symbol of its rising empire, have sunk itself so spectacularly? News reached King Gustavus Adolphus in Prussia. He was furious. His initial reaction was to demand punishment for those responsible, but he couldn't personally oversee the inquiry. An official inquiry was launched. Captain Hansen and other senior officers, along with the shipwrights, were questioned. The court sought to understand who was to blame for this national humiliation. Everyone pointed fingers. The shipwrights blamed the king's demands for more guns. The officers blamed the ship's instability. The inquiry struggled to find a single culprit because the truth was multifaceted. Despite extensive archival research and the recovered ship itself, certain details remain elusive. We don't know the exact sequence of events in the final moments on deck, or precisely what was said between the officers as the ship began its fatal roll. Personal testimonies were sparse and often self-serving. The inquiry ultimately concluded that no one was negligent. How could they? The real culprit was the ship's inherent instability, a design flaw rooted in the very top, in the king's own ambitions. The Vasa was too narrow for its height and heavy armament. It had 2 full gun decks, but insufficient ballast to counteract the weight. It was, quite simply, top-heavy, a floating death trap. This catastrophic failure provided invaluable, albeit tragic, lessons in naval architecture. Future Swedish warships would incorporate more robust stability calculations and design principles. For 333 years, the Vasa lay at the bottom of Stockholm Harbor, preserved in the cold, brackish waters. It became a forgotten monument to a monumental failure, a time capsule waiting to be discovered. In the 1950s, a private researcher named Anders Frantzen became obsessed with finding the Vasa. He had painstakingly searched old archives, cross-referencing documents to pinpoint its resting place. Frantzen knew that the Baltic's unique conditions, low salinity and no shipworms, meant that wooden wrecks could be incredibly well preserved. He began dragging for targets in the harbor. On August 25, 1956, Frantzen's core sampler brought up a piece of black oak. It was unmistakably from an old ship. He had found the Vasa. It was a discovery that would rewrite maritime history. The Swedish Navy, along with professional salvagers, embarked on an ambitious plan to raise the entire ship. This was an unprecedented engineering feat, requiring years of meticulous planning. Using a series of lifting pontoons and cables, the Vasa was slowly, painstakingly raised from the seabed. It was a delicate operation, inch by painstaking inch, spanning several stages. On April 24, 1961, after 333 years, the Vasa finally broke the surface of the water a ghostly apparition from another age. It was a moment of triumph for modern engineering and historical preservation. But the work was far from over. The ship's wood, saturated with water, would quickly disintegrate if allowed to dry. An elaborate, decades-long preservation process began, involving polyethylene glycol. Today, the Vasa stands as the centerpiece of its own museum in Stockholm, a truly unique cultural treasure. It's the best-preserved 17th-century ship in the world, offering an unparalleled glimpse into the past. Thousands of artifacts were recovered alongside the ship: sailors' chests, tools, clothing, even skeletons. These objects tell the intimate stories of the men and women who lived and died with the Vasa. Forensic anthropologists studied the remains of the crew, piecing together their lives. We know their diets, their injuries, even what they looked like. It brings a profound human element to the disaster. The Vasa's 64 bronze cannons, retrieved separately, are particularly impressive. These were the very weapons that were meant to strike fear into Sweden's enemies, but instead contributed to its downfall. The Vasa stands as a stark reminder of the perils of hubris and unchecked ambition. A king's desire for the biggest and best, overriding practical engineering concerns, led to an avoidable tragedy. It's a powerful lesson in engineering ethics, the importance of independent assessment, of speaking truth to power, even when the stakes are incredibly high. Lives depend on it. The Vasa was meant to be a world beater, a symbol of Sweden's ascendancy. Instead, it became a cautionary tale, an emblem of how even the grandest visions can be undone by fundamental flaws. While we understand the technical reasons for its sinking, the enduring mystery is why no one halted the project. Why did the fear of the king outweigh the clear warnings of instability? Today, this embarrassing disaster has transformed into a priceless relic. The Vasa offers an unparalleled window into 17th century life, shipbuilding, and the unforgiving nature of the sea. The warship that sank itself, born of ambition and undone by design, now speaks volumes across centuries, a silent witness to a moment when power met physics and physics won. If you found this untold story of naval history fascinating, make sure to subscribe for more impossible battles, brilliant strategies, and soldiers who changed history.